So what's up, guys? I've been suspecting for a little while this smoke might be coming from the bottom side of the intake gasket. Someone did leave a comment, kind of did make a valid point that when I smoke tested this, you can't see the smoke come out from the bottom of the intake gasket if it's leaking there. Something else to consider is when we put this engine together, we deck the heads a lot and we never deck the intake, and there's a formula for if you deck X amount off the head, you need to take X amount Y off of the intake. We never did that, so that can cause some issues with the intake gaskets not sealing correctly, not sealing at all on the bottom, in which case it could suck oil up from the lifter valley into the combustion chamber, and then we have a bad time. So I'm kind of hoping that's what it is, because I don't want to condemn this engine for the smoke, and the idle surge does tend to correlate with the amount of smoke coming out, which would kind of indicate to me that maybe it's sucking up that much oil, and when it sucks up that much oil, it causes the idle to be erratic. You're effectively changing the air fuel, you're starting to foul the spark plug, you're doing a lot of bad things when that happens. So we're going to pull a plug out and check it, see what it looks like. If it's oily, we'll know it is burning oil from somewhere. One other thing is that it's possible my wideband is wrong, but I did just run this engine. It's nice and hot. It's cooling down as we speak, so I'm going to pull a fresh run plug out and hopefully get the most accurate reading. I've got my handy dandy SLP spark plug socket, which makes these not so painful. The plug actually sits like almost all the way through. This is a socket that they put up in a lathe and cut the end off of, and then drill that out so that the spark plug goes all the way through it. It's pretty cool. It gets in super tight, but I'm going to get one of these out and get the other one out on the other side. So like I was saying, that's more or less where it sits. I did gap these correctly, and the gaps are still good, so that's a good sign. But you put this in there, get a ratcheting wrench with a swivel head, and you can take these things right out. It's not a big deal, but there's a lot of oil on the threads, and the electrode or the ground strap itself is pretty charred, but it doesn't look wet. As far as I can tell, there is a lot of soot on that thing though. It almost makes me wonder if my wideband is reading incorrectly. It's good practice to verify with the plug. But I'm going to grab some pictures of this thing and then pull one out on the other side. So I pulled the plug out of the next cylinder over. This would be number 3, I guess. But anyway, same thing, oily threads, but electrode looks good, ground strap looks good, and it looks the same, which to me, if they look the same, there's no cause for alarm compared to what the first one looked like. Just like when I checked all the plugs in the Corvette before we went to the tuner, because I had those unknown injectors in it, I just like to see that it's even, they all match. So all the plugs ended up looking good. I pulled the PCV out when I did the injectors and never plugged it back in. So I'm trying to relearn the idle in gear and in park, which so far is going well. It actually isn't making much correction, but there's still a lot of idle surge. And at this point, I need to get a fuel pressure gauge. The one I have here doesn't have the adapter for a Chevy thing, which it probably did, and I probably lost it. So I got to get one of those. We'll check the fuel pressure, make sure that's not surging, because if you're surging fuel pressure, you're going to have weird surging issues in the area of the delta of fuel pressure. So if the injector's rated at say 26 psi at 50 pounds of fuel pressure, if you cut that in half, it's actually only going to flow 13. It'll flow 13 at 25. With different atomization, obviously, but it's also true in the reciprocal. Like if you were to do 50% more fuel pressure, so 75 pounds of fuel pressure, the 26-pound injector would flow like a 39 to some extent. So if there's variation, it's almost like varying the injector flow rate. So then the pulse widths are wrong and stuff like that. But you can hear it right now, and you probably can see it in the way the light changes. There's something going on. Because it bogs the engine down and everything, and the lights start to go out. So the cam ain't that big and lumpy that it can't hold an idle. Like, this is kind of strange, and you know, I want to say it idled before years ago, but I'm also wondering, was I like too young and stupid, and I was just like, oh yeah, it's race car shit, and just, you know, let it run like ass. I don't really know. But we're gonna get to the bottom of it one night. You know, unfortunately I just work on this car in my little bit of free time, so we'll see. Sorry for the boring video. See y'all next time. So it's been a couple weeks. I got a new phone. I couldn't leave that video where I did. It just seemed like a waste of time, so we got the fuel pressure gauge hooked up. There's actually no pressure in the rail at the moment, which is kind of weird, but it's been sitting for a few weeks, so I'm going to prime it. We'll see if we get some pressure in that thing. Can't say I'm surprised that the cheap fuel pressure regulator doesn't seal very well, or fuel pressure gauge, but we're holding pretty steady at 40 psi, just with the prime purge, so that's good. I guess I'm gonna start this thing up, see if we can get it to run, watch the fuel pressure, and make sure it's relatively steady, and then I'm gonna disconnect the map sensor as well and see if that changes anything. So I disconnected the map sensor. It didn't really change anything. The car just slowly ran worse and worse and worse until it died. We're almost up to operating temp. It's holding fuel pressure pretty steady at like 38 psi, which is lower than I would expect, but I do have the Holley fuel pressure regulator on this for the stealth ramp. So it's kind of weird. I might pull the vacuum line off and see if it makes a difference. But yeah, I thought that was kind of weird, but even still, should be running fine at 38 psi of fuel pressure, especially consistently, which tells me the pump's not bad. The only other thing I wanted to do today was pull the throttle body off, clean it up. I bought a gasket kit for the IAC housing and everything, check all that out, make sure it's all good. At this point, this has a new IAC, new injectors. We verified it's not the distributor, we verified it's not the map sensor. The O2 sensor's new, the spark plugs are new, the plug wires are new. I'm kind of running out of ideas, and it's making me think that maybe this intake gasket leaks. It just, to me, it seems weird that it would go bad sitting when it was fine before. Or maybe it was like, I think I said this before, maybe it was never actually fine and I just thought it was. I don't know, but it never had issues hunting for idle like this and stalling the way it does. But I'm gonna let this thing get up to temp and make sure it still does this in closed loop, and then we're gonna pull the throttle body off. It's probably kind of hard to see in the video, but the amount of smoke that's been coming out of these throttle body ports or bolt holes is alarming. The amount of oil in here, equally as alarming. Yeah, so let me get this last bolt out. So that's quite a bit of smoke, and that's a ton of oil. Oh my god. Shit. I'm tempted to put a catch can on this thing just to verify it's not the PCV. I don't think it is, but holy shit. It's either a ton of blow-by or the intake is pulling oil up from the bottom and it's just drenching the inside of the plenum with oil. Holy shit. That's crazy. I'm gonna keep digging, I guess, and clean this gasket off. So I'm still cleaning that gasket surface off. That shit is stuck on there real good. But we got this kit, so I guess I'll tear the throttle body apart. I have a feeling that's blow-by, or it's sucking oil up from under the intake, but the amount that comes out of the PCV when it's running makes me think that there's something going on. So the intake has to come off to pull the motor out, kind of. So at that point, I'll pull the intake, see what it looks like. If it looks like that was leaking and that is the cause of all the oil consumption, I have to take the heads off anyway, or take the whole motor to the machine shop to find out how much has to be decked off the intake. Because these heads were decked, we never decked the intake. There is a good possibility they don't line up at the bottom. So yeah, the way I kind of see it is no matter what, this engine probably has to come back out of the car. So it sucks. Luckily, I've done this quite a few times and I have the equipment to do this quicker, and I'm better at working on things now than I was before. So probably put a bigger cam in at that point too, because why the fuck not? about pulling this thing out and resealing this timing cover that leaks to not put a bigger cam in. Kind of feels like cheating because my goal was a 12-second pass with this combo, but I do think this cam leaves a lot to be desired. It leaves a lot on the table given the intake this thing has. Moral of that story is don't listen to all the builds on the internet just because one guy did it and 20 people repeated it but never actually did it themselves. Just said this guy got good results. I definitely learned that lesson. But yeah, let me crack this bitch open. So yeah, I mean, obviously you would expect some oil, but like this right here is a puddle. That's a puddle. That's a puddle. That's a puddle. Like, it's just puddles of oil in this fucking plenum. And, you know, even for normal PCV function, I wouldn't expect this much on an engine with like maybe 10,000 miles on it. That's also hot as fuck. That should burn off. But the videos and pictures, it doesn't look so bad, but in real life, that's concerning to me. But throttle body's clean, I'm letting it dry. I'm gonna scrape a little bit more off of this and get this thing sealed up, and I might have a plenum leak too, based on the oil that seems to be coming from the bottom of the plenum. Right there. So that would be an unmetered air leak and a source for oil to get out, but like I said, it's probably gotta come apart anyway. New throttle body's on there. I'm gonna leave this off for now. Just see what it does. So yeah, that made literally no difference. So I guess I will catch you guys next time when we're pulling the motor out of this thing. Thanks for watching. As a side note, I got an aluminum drive shaft finally. It came off of that 4th gen I ripped the bumper off of. So supposedly, according to the all-knowing internet, this is worth 1/10 in the quarter mile. So we're gonna throw this in next time the car's on the lift.